when it comes to who I'm going to marry. What is this person's character? Because you can go by what someone says. Now listen close, lean in. You can go by what someone says and what they tell you, but it's their actions that tell you the truth. That's what money does. Looking at finances, it tells you about the person's real inner self. It tells you who they really are. Hey, so let's just go ahead and get into it. Should you marry someone with $100,000 worth of debt? So I feel like there's just two variables. I would look at the type of debt that it is. And then I would also look at the person's income. Let's break down the type of debt, because that's a big deal. That's going to determine if you should go along and commit and pledge your life with this person or not. Because you have debt that can be bankruptable, debt that you can sell something and get rid of, like credit card debt or car loan debt. You can get rid of the car and just sell it, and hey, look, you're out of debt like the next day. Or with credit cards, you can
can't really sell that though.
No.
You're looking like what, repo or something?
Depending on what was bought with the cards, you can. But then you have something even more sinister. You have student loan debt, which is not bankruptable. It does not go away in bankruptcy. And the only way to get out of it, unless you pay it, is to die. Like, that's the only way. They're with you forever. So they're guaranteed to be with you for your entire marriage. I could handle the student loan debt because it was taken out for the sake of something that would better a person's life. Credit cards, if someone racked up over $100,000 worth of debt using credit cards or car loans or personal loans or just payday loans or just anything of that nature, I feel like it's a personality issue. Like that means something else, because $100,000 worth of stuff means that person is a little excessive, or they are seeking to fulfill something in their life through things. I just personally would not want that kind of personality.
What you're saying is that if for some reason, you and that spouse won the lottery or something like that, you don't want to be with the person who would be like those people who would spend everything and they're back, in debt,
Correct.
The next year or whatever.
Correct. I feel like it's a values issue. I feel like it's a morality issue to an extent. Like, I just feel like that would not be a match for me, because my personality and just what I value isn't things. And if I marry someone who is like that, we're just going to clash in literally every decision, every sort of area. So that's thing one. What type of debt is it? That's what I would consider. Mm-hmm. Now, I will put a caveat, like a little asterisk, that you can get $100,000 worth of student loan debt, and that can still be an indicator of poor personality or poor habits. It could be this person, made a bad decision and going to school, or they didn't finish, and they have this like background of just taking more and more and more and more and more and more money. So that's something to consider too. Like, what do they do? What are the results? What are the results of the debt? What do they have to show for it? Do they just have to show things and cars, like a Bugatti or a Tesla or something? Like, what are they showing? Or are they showing an education? Are they showing an attempt to be flashy? That's going to tell me more about a person's character. And that's, to me, more important when it comes to who I'm going to marry. What is this person's character? Because you can go by what someone says. Now listen close, lean in. You can go by what someone says and what they tell you, but it's their actions that tell you the truth. Let me say it again. You can go by what someone says, but their actions are going to tell you the truth. So that's what money does. Looking at finances, it tells you about the person's real inner self. It tells you who they really are. Do you agree?
Yeah, I mean, like, you can be $100,000 in debt and be in student loan debt and be a doctor, or you could be $100,000 in debt and be pretty much nothing, right. Or not really nothing, but have a job that's not going to pay it off in a year or a year and a half or whatever. Like, I know a lot of people in college back in my day would take out the maximum amount, and then they were just driving around in nice cars and stuff.
Right. Or
Those
nice
cars
clothes.
have lost value, over the time. And honestly, by now, they could still be in debt, and then the cars are already, sold off or pawned or whatever.
Right.
Not pawned, but you know.
And that's the whole thing we talked about in our other video about the Borrowed Future documentary. Just the fact that people take out loans usually when they're young like that. A, their brain isn't fully developed, and B, their priorities are all mixed up and all. So that's thing one. You kind of touched on my other thing to consider, and that is
Income.
That is their income. Yes, that is their income. Basically, their career trajectory. Basically, and it doesn't even have to be a career. It just has to be, okay, how are you making money? Where are you getting the money to pay off this debt? Are you on a trajectory and on a path that's going to be able to pay off this debt? Like, you have to have, in order to pay off debt, you have to have money to live on, and then you have to have this pool of extra money to pay off the debt. So we have to live, we have to exist, we have to have food and rent and transportation and taxes and everything else, healthcare, blah, blah, blah. But then we also need to have this disposable income so we can throw it at the debt and pay it off. $100,000, I'm here to tell you, is a lot of money for most people, and it's going to take a long time to pay it off. No matter how much, in a normal average world, it's going to take a long time to pay off. Unless you are in one of those professional fields where you are making six figures. I know Dave talks about the ratio of, the shovel to hole ratio. If you have a huge hole, like $100,000, it's a huge hole. That's a lot of debt. But if you have a huge shovel, you're a doctor, you're an attorney, or you are an astrophysicist. I don't know, but you're making some good money. Then it's okay because it matches up, like the ratio matches up. However, if you have this huge hole, this huge debt, and you're a public school teacher, it's going to be a little harder. It's going to take a little longer. But to me, is that a deal breaker? Does that spell trouble for your marriage? And I would say yes. I wouldn't say that it is a deal breaker because, you have to obviously take into other things into account, but I would say it spells trouble. But I think there's still hope, and I think that for us, and maybe for other people, we could have dodged a little bit, and we could have made this a little easier had we planned it a little more. And what I'm saying is specific is either you attack it as soon as you get married. Get rid of it as soon as possible in your marriage. We didn't do that. We didn't get rid of it as soon as possible. Yeah. So in a way, I guess I'm not saying not to do it. Like I said, for the first one, what kind of debt is it? To me, it's more black and white. It's a deal breaker if, you got $100,000 worth of stuff. And maybe you have a spending problem. Like, I wouldn't be attracted to that, and the whole values thing, the character, it just wouldn't match up. That's probably wouldn't have been it. But if the debt is out of whack with the income, that's more of a roll of the dice. Like, it's a depends answer for me. Well, what is it? What about you? Like, how do you see it?
Yeah, I mean, it's the same idea. I think that if someone is $100,000 in debt and they want to get married with someone, then they at least need to be showing some form of proof of action beforehand. If you are looking to marry someone who has $100,000 in debt, at least see that they have some plan and that they are or have made some kind of payments in the past or something like that. Just to, or trying to be consistent with that. That way it's not like, is everything just, relying on the person coming in or them having a marriage or something before they start getting things together. That shows a lot more on character than anything else, I believe.
But did we do that?
No.
We weren't paying on it before.
No, I was scared of that stuff, and I was scared of that stuff even after we got married. But I think that that's a good character representation to look at is if they're in debt and they're attempting to pay it or they have been paying on it, even if it's just minimal amounts, something.
Yeah. The honesty too. do you know about this? Like, how far did you get into the relationship before they tell you? So, obviously, if it's something where they're just kind of throwing it on you last minute, that's something to consider.
Yeah, like, let them, if they're open about it, if it's really something that's an interest in their lives or whatever, they would let you know, within the first, second date, early on in the relationship before things get serious. If, when someone's trying to, looking at anyone who listens to Dave Ramsey, who actually follows Dave Ramsey stuff, you'll know if they actually live a lifestyle of trying to do the baby steps and stuff. You'll know that. You'll be able to tell that pretty quickly.
That, and you'll know a person's personality and their character by how they spend their money and what they value. Do they value, fancy purses and clothes at all? Not saying there's anything wrong with that, but if you're sitting with a lot of debt, do you really need all those things? So, and you'll get to see. I guess the idea is that you have to go in with your eyes wide open, and that's difficult when you're dating because you are, you got the stars in your eyes and the butterflies in your tummy, like it's. So you're not really thinking straight.
I do want to say that if you're the one who's not in debt, or at least not with $100,000 of debt, you need to really look at, your income. Do you want to help someone pay off their debt? Do you want to help someone pay off their debt? Are you making the doctor, lawyer type of money where you are willing to pay off someone's debt for the sake of love and kind of take the risk of the lottery syndrome? You know what I mean?
Oh, that they'll just get back into debt again?
Yeah, or they'll start spending your money. Like, that's probably the credit card style people. Still, like, looking at their track, like, maybe they were $150,000 in debt and they are now $100,000 in debt. Like, maybe they have been paying stuff off, they paid off a lot, their shovel's still kind of small though. Maybe that's the issue, and that's more acceptable, you know what I mean?
Right. Yeah, because there's a thing of marrying for potential. I've heard that before, that you shouldn't marry for potential. Like, hey, this person is this right now, but hey, they could be a doctor. They could be a lawyer or astrophysicist. And at this point, I could be an astrophysicist, but am I on that track? Like, have I made steps to that now? I'm going to give a little Bible wisdom. I can't take credit for it, but you have to test. You have to prove things. You can't just go by potential or what it seems like, because people are real good at covering up. So you have to go by, what have they done? What are they doing now? And what's their mindset? Like, what is their thought on debt? Like, are they okay with it? Are they going on like it's all right? Or do they know it's a problem and they're trying to better themselves to get out of it? It has to be considered if debt, this $100,000 worth of debt, was kind of a mistake of ignorance, or is it a pattern of behavior? And you'll be able to see that over time. So as far as potential, there are outliers. Obviously, not everyone's the exception. So that's why this is so delicate and it's kind of hard to play, but I believe everybody has some sort of intuition and they can tell, especially given time, because the more time you have with a person, the more you'll be able to prove, the more you'll be able to test, the more evident a person's inner being is going to be. They can't cover up everything forever. So you spend more time with them, you ask them some questions, then it's eventually going to come out. So as far as my husband, here, when we were dating, you were living with your parents. You weren't working a full-time job. And on the outside, and I don't think you had a car, really. Sort of. You had one, but not super reliable. Okay. So on paper, most people say, pass. No, thank you. No, thank you. But what he was then, like, 9-10 years ago, making, how much would you say you were making? Like, probably less than $10,000 a year with that job, because it was so part-time.
I was a crossing guard. And I got paid $12 an hour, but it was only 2 hours a day.
Right.
So $24 times 5.
Right.
So it was $120, something like that. $120 a week.
Right.
It was very, very low.
Very low. And just everything else probably screams, like makes the red lights go off for every woman in America.
And my dad at that time was already up there. I was already at probably $90,000 or $100,000
and a lot of debt with no degree to show for it. And
an associate's degree, but not anything really that big.
Right. And no real kind of career path, and living with your parents, like I said, any other woman would, be gone.
And technically, I didn't, I held off too. I was like, I don't want to. I need to work on myself a little bit first.
Right. Yeah. So yeah. To that credit. However, what I was trying to contrast is where you started. You started there, and then now, fast forward maybe 10 years later, I think for 2021. You grossed 80, almost 90, according to our records anyway, as far as income.
We'll get our taxes done soon.
Yeah, who made close to 100K, like that was the goal. So it took 10 years, but anyone would say, no, don't bet on that. Like, no. So you kind of have to, that was proving my point about outliers. But I do want to say that what I really love about my husband is that the values, the character, that was more valuable to me than the debt. He told me about his debt. I was aware of it. I knew it was a lot. And, in the back of my mind, I was like, okay, we'll get rid of it. Because we both wanted that. We both went through Dave Ramsey's Financial Peace University class. We were both familiar. He didn't have a credit card. So there goes that one thing about frivolous spending on just junk and stuff. He wasn't materialistic. He wasn't, trying to show off or anything so those kind of values are more important to me. It's said that when you meet a person and what they did then, they're going to continue to do. This was the only man I met who actually wanted to do a Bible study with me, actually wanted to pray with me. So, and those are my values. Those are some that were super important to me. I thought that was gold. So I was like, okay, absolutely, yes. Take me down. I'm going to paint the picture of what $100,000 worth of debt has cost us. This may be disturbing for some viewers. I'm sorry, it really is. It's not funny. I don't know why I'm laughing, but it is a little disturbing. But it has been our life. And I feel like people need to know before you make that decision. So as far as housing, we've had to live in income-based housing. We've had to live in small spaces. We don't have a house. We don't own a house. We don't rent a house. We haven't gotten close to a house. We have had to deal with drugs, neighbors doing drugs. We've had to deal with pests. And when I say pests, I mean roaches that don't go away, okay? Ants.
Sometimes lizards.
Ants, lizards, everything else, just kind of invading your living space, where you eat, where you sleep, where you bathe, obviously not all at once, but dealing with this pattern because of apartment living.
The time the ceiling fell through?
Right, we've had to deal with poor structures, we have to deal with managers, and just the ills of apartment living. As far as food and clothes, we've had to wear clothes that are less than desirable, clothes that wear out. Obviously, a hole in your sock here and there is, I guess, what the most people have to deal with. But no, we're on year 9, 10 of wearing the same clothes. We, have children. Not being able to provide fully for our children, be it clothes, be it furniture, be it experiences, be it food. We've had government assistance as far as food. Now we don't get to visit family, much less friends, because of
funerals.
Because of gas. We've skipped funerals because of gas, because of time, because just not having the money to get there. We don't participate in fun. There are no dates. There are no date night. There's no playing with friends, just hanging out with friends, or having some sort of social life, going out and listening to a jazz, whatever. We don't do any of that. Giving, we're not able to really give to friends or people that we hear about in church who get married or have children or graduate, or being able to give to people we see on the side of the road, or just to give to organizations, because of all this debt that we're under.
Now, keep in mind though, this is not. This is like, like someone who's a Dave Ramsey follower or listener would say that that's part of baby step 2 to do all that rice and beans and rice. But this is before sort of the baby step 2 stuff. We were living baby step 2 even when we're not trying to get out of debt.
Right.
That's the downside of it. We're not doing it for 1.5 to 2 years to get out of debt. We were doing it our entire marriage just because we couldn't afford it.
Right. Because we didn't have the money, and we weren't even paying on the debt. It's not like we had the money, but getting into all of that debt led to a lifestyle where we could not make enough money to pay the debt. There is a strong correlation between high debt amount and, what would you call that? Like a low income potential. Like, usually people with a lot of debt don't have enough money to pay it off. And that's the boat that we found ourselves in, is that we didn't have the potential to make a lot of money at the time. And we're carrying all this debt. And the last thing was just, the pain of not being able to provide for your children who didn't even ask to be here, so that's what debt is like with $100,000 worth of debt. Should you marry someone with $100,000 worth of debt? Yes or no? I'm gonna say it depends. Like, it depends on you, what you want to deal with. Can you deal with all that? Like, are you strong enough to handle that? What's your grit level like? Like, are you mentally tough? Like,
or if you're not making a substantial amount of money yourself, are you willing to work with that?
Right. And do you have a plan and willing to follow that plan to get rid of that debt as soon as possible? I feel like that's the only way that it works very well, is if as soon as you get married, you do all the sacrificing, all the roaches and all that stuff. You do all that in the beginning of the marriage before you have children, or before you want to do certain other things in the marriage. Get rid of that. Do whatever you need to do. Go bananas. Go scorched earth, like what Dave talks about. Do all that in the beginning, and then I would say yes. And
a person has some good qualities. They could be, strongly spiritual and be someone who leads in that and cares a lot about, the future and your destination after life. What I mean? They could just be really just good people, someone who laughs, who will never, cheat on you and all that kind of stuff. Because let's face it, getting out of debt is cool, but if the person cheats on you, you might as well leave anyway. I mean, so, or someone who has hundreds of thousands of dollars, or they're making a lot of money and they're not in debt at all. If they cheat on you, you're out anyway, more than likely, unless you want to just be in there just because they have a lot of money, and that's not a good way to live. Debt taints people. It taints the character of a person. And that stuff is cute while you're single, but when you're married, everything seems to be expanded. It seems to. Right. It seems to magnify.
Absolutely, yes. And that's, I 100% agree with that. Once you get married, those little things are not little anymore. They're huge, and so you have to be careful. It's hard to tell exactly, how much you can handle because you aren't married yet. I will say this, that debt is a stressor, and there are many other stressors. Marriage is difficult because of stress. That stress can be financial. It could be, health. It could be, any number of things. So it's a matter of working together as a team and just, what you can, what's your commitment level. The fact that we have all this debt, it's going to take both of us working together, putting our heads together, and being creative to get rid of it. Has made us closer, made us stronger, and we wouldn't have that closeness or that bond, be it not for this debt. So maybe this debt was kind of good, not really, but it did have some sort of purpose that we can extract something good out of. So there's that.
Yeah, like looking at military life, looking at police academy life, the stresses that you go through with somebody do build bonds, almost like a familial, a strong brother, sister, just blood bond with someone when you're struggling through something together.
Right.
And this is it's a gentle, debt is gentle in marriage more so than other negatives like cheating or drinking or drugs or someone on all that other stuff. It is gentler, but it is very still painful to deal with.
Yeah, don't be afraid to walk away. If you don't say nobody warned you. I think we painted the picture pretty clear, and so it's up to you to obviously to decide if you want to go through with it or not.
And the last thing to think about,
Yeah.
if you do walk away, but you do really care about this person, if the person really does care about you, they would get their act together, at least have a plan, at least start moving towards the right direction, and they'll come back to you.
Yeah. And don't feel like, that makes you a gold digger because you're in debt and I'm not interested in with a man who's in it, blah, blah, blah. I don't think so, because you know yourself, and why go through something that you feel like would fail, or that maybe you aren't or the other person isn't strong enough to go through. So see that as a sign of strength and not a sign of materialistic or weak or what have you, because nobody gets married expecting to be divorced, or no one gets married wanting a divorce. You want it to last. So do what you can to make that commitment last. And if it means, you're not able to marry someone with $100,000 worth of debt, know that on the front end, not once you're already in the marriage and then yeah.